Well, chased and battered, China, this was totally expected, viewer, has pointed a finger of blame directly at India. China and its military have continued to try and obfuscate and obscure what really happened in Tawang. The Chinese military establishment has issued a statement saying that Indian troops illegally crossed the disputed border. China's military says on Tuesday, Indian soldiers illegally crossed the disputed border in the Himalayas and obstructed Chinese troops, which triggered a fresh standoff last week. Now, many parts of that statement, ironically, are true, except the word illegally, because it was Chinese troops, remember, that had infiltrated or intruded onto the Indian side of the disputed border. They were challenged, beaten up, and chased back across the border by the Indian side. Those are the facts of the case, I have to say. So here's what the Chinese military spokesperson has just said.
我们了解，目前中印边境局势总体平稳，双方一直通过外交和军事渠道就涉边问题保持畅通的沟通，希望印方同中方相向而行，认真落实两国领导人达成的重要共识，严格遵守双方签署的有关协议协定精神，共同维护中印边境地区的和平安宁。至于你提到的具体问题，建议你向有关的主管部门来询问。
To some explosive facts first. Before we go to our reporters, we've just shown you what the Chinese military and defense ministry spokespersons have just said about what happened in Tawang. But the facts speak for themselves. India is a democracy. We can't hide the facts. We report the facts. The military most certainly doesn't have a choice in the matter, because these are the facts based on what happened on the ground, and we've gotten them directly from Tawang. The Indian Army unit had advance intelligence about the possibility of an aggressive action from the Chinese side. Very, very important. The Indian Army had pre-deployed troops on the lower ridges, is something that we've been able to confirm. About 300 odd Chinese troops had arrived in that particular area, and immediately after they ran into the Indian deployment there was verbal abuse, which quickly escalated into violent stone pelting, which we also saw in Galwan, remember, and then there were fisticuffs. People started punching each other and beating each other up. The Indian troops then rapidly summoned reinforcements to that area. They were fully prepared already, and these reinforcements totally surrounded the Chinese patrol party of about 50 men, backed up by another 150 men. Indian reinforcements completely surrounded them and pounced on them because the stone pelting was continuing. They pounced on them, totally overwhelmed them in two pockets. Chinese soldiers were beaten up really, really badly. Many injuries were sustained in this phase of the clash. This is when the Chinese troops realized that they were being completely overpowered and outnumbered, and they began to retreat like all a military would do that in this particular situation, especially China. Indian troops chased the Chinese troops back across the border, a disputed border, and in this particular point, remember, the Chinese defense ministry is correct, because yes, the Indian side did cross the border, except it wasn't illegally. It was to chase these intruders out. We are told, a very important piece of information, some Chinese soldiers were actually captured as part of the skirmish, during that grand retreat by the Chinese forces, but they were released after a couple of hours. A group of about 50 Indian Army troops aggressively approached the Chinese post on their side, and so unnerved and panicked was the Chinese post, we are told, that they started firing shots in the air, which is something that almost never happens in such a situation, but so threatened were they by the Indian side that they fired shots in the air. The Indian side then used loudspeakers, both sides used loudspeakers to communicate with each other. Warnings were issued by the Indian side to the effect that if you ever try something like this again, we won't stop here the next time. We will go probably even further than this.